Thank you.
And we are live. Good morning, everyone. It is a blistering cold Saturday down here in Fort Worth, Texas. Oh my goodness, how cold it is. It is 19 degrees here,
Oh
and I
man.
cannot even begin to tell you how disgusted I am about that. On one hand, I'm trying to tell you, on one hand, I am, so thankful that I have the activity of my limbs to be able to feel that it's cold. But everybody that knows Dr. Pitts knows this sister cannot stand to be cold. I can't
I
stand
thought
to
you
be
left the
cold.
East Coast to avoid 19 degree weather.
Tell him, Ronnie. I'm like, what's going on right now? What do
You
you
took
mean?
you brought the East Coast down south.
Exactly.
Yeah,
They want to tell you to go back home, take your
Yeah.
weather with you.
it's disrespectful. Texas is under a winter advisory, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what y'all trying to do to me right now, but it is all types of ridiculous, and I'm feeling some type of way about it. So, I just want to say a blistering cold good morning to our Facebook Live audience. We are so happy to be back with you this Saturday. I am your sports mental health empowerment coach extraordinaire, Dr. Lauren Pitts. I have with me today my amazing co-host week after week after week, Ronnie Ransom, and joining us for the next few weeks, who, you know what, fate has an awesome way of working things out, because with Jared having to go on sabbatical, Andre's been on sabbatical, and Miss Carla Debro said, you know what, I got y'all. And she is here with us for the next few weeks. So we are super excited to have her here with us for the next few weeks, offering this amazing perspective from that of a coach and female scholar athlete, because y'all know the past few weeks I've been surrounded by all this testosterone. So thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, Miss Carla, for joining us. Look, folks, we here at PreGame, it's all about family for us, right? It's all about family. It's all about education, empowerment, and liberation. Because what we know to be true is that among us black and brown folks, there's so much information that just doesn't funnel down to our communities and to our households. And there's just so much stuff that we don't know. So we pride ourselves here at PreGame in providing you information, but specifically, we are very passionate about our HBCU community. We are passionate about scholar and professional athletes and their families. So, we want to make sure that we're connecting with each of you and that we are giving you all some very pertinent information that can really help you transform your lives, transform your performance rating, and ultimately help you all to live the lives that you love living on the field, off the field, on the court, off the court, baseball diamond, swimming, whatever it is you do. This information that we're sharing with you week in and week out, we know that it is going to empower you to enhance your performance or to be supportive of your scholar or professional athlete, perhaps in ways that you hadn't considered before. As many of you know, Ronnie and I are mental health practitioners, so we always share with you mental health information every week, because as he and Miss Carla will share with you, and I sort of co-sign as a parent and a former spouse of a scholar athlete, mental health is a huge part of athletic performance. And if your head's not right, your game is not going to be right. So we're going to talk about that week after week and give you that pertinent information. As you know, we are now a part of the Heritage Sports Radio Network, and we are so glad about that. We are so excited about that. You can hear us every Saturday on Heritage Sports Radio Network at 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. You can also catch us on Sundays at 6 p.m. on HSRN. But we're happy to be a part of that family. We are growing by leaps and bounds and really just reaching out to a national and an international audience. And we're really excited about that. But I do want to pause for a moment. because our HSRN family has suffered an extraordinary loss. Our dear friend and colleague, Mr. Thomas Hill from HSRN, he's the program manager there. He suffered the devastating loss of one of his children last Tuesday. So I asked you, our viewing and listening audience, to please, please, please keep the Hill family in your thoughts and prayers, and just send positive love and energy and warmth and embrace their way, because as you can imagine, and as Ronnie and Carla and I were talking before the show, parents aren't supposed to have to bury their children. We know that God has the final say. Mr. Hill is certainly an extraordinary man of faith, a minister of the gospel himself. So spiritually, he understands that God has the final say, but knowing that doesn't ease that pain. So we send our heartfelt condolences and love and warmth and embrace to the Hill family today. Ronnie, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Dr. Pitts. And like Dr. Pitts said, our condolences with the Hill family. I can't even begin to imagine how he's feeling and how his family's feeling. So our prayers and thoughts go out to his family. Good morning, everybody. Welcome again for another week of House Talk pregame. We got a great show lined up for everybody. As you all know, last week we wrapped up football season. Unfortunately for me and Dr. Pitts, our Super Bowl pick didn't go how we wanted it to. But shout out to Tampa Bay for, a phenomenal game plan. And shout out to the 4 Black coordinators that they have on the team.
Yes.
Byron Leftwich and the defensive coordinator. His name just slipped out of my mind. But shout out to them, because they had a hell of a game plan last week to slow down the Kansas City Chiefs. I did not see the Kansas City Chiefs only kicking 3 field goals.
They carved them up.
Didn't they? Spiced
It's like they had a 13th player on the field.
Yes.
It got real quick. By halftime, I was like, oh man, this ain't looking too good.
Right.
But shout out to Tampa Bay, well-deserved win. Shout out to the 4 coordinators for putting a masterful game plan together. But look, we're getting ready to transition into basketball season. So we have an action-packed show lined up for today. So we're going to be talking about hoop dreams. Are they dreams or are they realities? We all, shout out to Miss Carla Debro for being here today. She was a former coach at Savannah State University. So she's going to give us her insight and her perspective on, a basketball coach getting ready for the season, working with student athletes of color, and how their perception of their hoop dreams might be different from other races and things like that. We're also going to be talking about how that ambition, competition, and race affects not only the African-American society as far as student athletes go, but also when they reach their dreams, what do they do from there? So we have a lot lined up for you today. Back to you, Dr. Pitts.
Yeah, so we're gonna put the disclaimer out here too, because Ronnie is in the middle of an ice storm where he is in Virginia. Miss Carla is in the middle of some extremely inclement weather. I'm under winter advisory here in Texas, so we're just letting you know we're gonna be hopeful that we don't have any connectivity issues, but if we do, we just ask you, our listening and viewing audience, to be a little patient with us, because it's crazy outside, y'all.
It's raining all over the world.
Yeah. It's kind of
happy with us.
out there. So look, so what we did last year, during football season, Ronnie and I, we did a diagnosis of the week. We did that week in and week out, and we shared mental health disorders and conditions with you. We gave you insight about those conditions, what signs and symptoms were, gave you resources on how you can go about getting yourself screened for mental illness, or giving you information to help you to better support a loved one that may be suffering from mental illness. We talked about the importance of really understanding mental illness beyond the stigma that's associated with it in Black and Brown communities, and beyond what you hear in the street about how crazy somebody is and why they're crazy. We're really big on education here at HT. And we take it very, very personal to make sure that you have the information. So as we're transitioning and really going strong in 2021, We concluded doing the diagnosis of the week, and now for the remainder of 2021 and beyond, we're going to be giving you mental health tips each week. So week after week, Ronnie and I are going to be sharing that information with you. We certainly encourage you to join us via chat. We are live on Facebook. You can email us at htpregame@gmail.com if you have comments or questions, or if there's a particular topic you want us to speak on from a mental health perspective as it relates to athletic performance and family dynamics. We are certainly willing to do that. And we want to hear from you. We absolutely want to hear from you. So as I shared with you, last week, for the next few weeks, my mental health tips of the week are going to be focused around the importance of nurturing relationships, right? And how fitting today, with tomorrow being Valentine's Day, for those of you that acknowledge. So the first mental health tip that I want to give you today is highlighting the importance of sharing something beautiful, especially if it doesn't cost anything with someone else. Now, that's not a disclaimer for you. I'm like, you know what? Dr. Piss has said, all I got to do is share something beautiful with you, and I don't have to spend no money. Stop lying. Stop lying. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. If you haven't gone and stop lying. Go get them gifts. Go get whatever. Everybody doesn't like flowers. You need to know your mate, your significant other, your child, your parent, whomever it is that you're honoring tomorrow for Valentine's Day. Go ahead and spend that money if you have it to spend. But also know that you can share beautiful thoughts and feelings and gestures without having to spend money. I will say, for as much as I love beautiful gifts, Dr. Pitt's got expensive taste, y'all. I love beautiful gifts. Love blingage and sparkly things. Love it.
What better way to a woman's heart?
I'm trying to tell you,
Bling,
sparkly
bling.
things.
It ain't chocolate, it's diamonds.
Yeah, exactly. Our girl's best friend.
Indeed.
They made a song from it.
Whoever said it knew what they were talking about. But I will also tell you that some of the most heartfelt gifts that I've received that literally reduced me to tears were the homemade cards or the kind gestures, something that society would probably consider the little things, right? It didn't cost anything, but it truly, truly, truly was an expression of the heartfelt love that the person had for me, whether it be Andre or my fiance or, my mom or my dad, my brother, sister, whoever it was. Those things go a long way. And I think the reason why they do is because they take a little bit more thought, right? It's like a diamond is a diamond is a diamond. We love diamonds. So you can give me a tennis bracelet and a heart shape. Now you can do whatever you want with the diamonds. And I'm like, oh, diamonds. But also really taking that time to think about the little things about your mate or whomever you're honoring that they might not even know that you've noticed, right? And doing something, writing a poem, creating a homemade card, carving something for them, whatever the case may be. Okay, so sharing something beautiful, even though it might not cost something monetary. The second tip that I want to give you is remembering that calming yourself down takes a lot of energy. Calming yourself down with the help of someone you trust takes a lot less energy. We exist in relation to other people. Without talking about relationships, we miss one wall that's holding the roof up. If you want to be mentally healthy, you should have good friends and be in healthy relationships with people that you can trust. Ronnie?
That was awesome advice, Dr. Piss. Thank you for that. Like Dr. Piss was saying, tomorrow is Valentine's Day, Lover's Day, whatever you want to call it. So my tips today are how we communicate anger with a loved one, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever the case may be. We always hear one of the biggest reasons for divorces, breakups, and stuff like that is whether it's financial reasons, cheating, infidelities, and all that good stuff. Me personally, I feel like the number one reason most relationships fail is a lack of effective communication.
Yes.
two sides can communicate, but if that communication is not effective and there's no solution behind that, then it's just words. So I want to list out some unhelpful ways to communicate with your partner that can, not resolve the solution. Some unhelpful ways to communicate anger is if somebody is impulsively blurting out rude comments. So let's say you and your loved one are having a disagreement or argument, and the other person or you decide to start taking personal blows or personal shots at that person to try and win the argument. That's not going to solve it at all. Blaming others, for example, this is all your fault, not taking accountability in this situation, playing the victim, not opening to finding a solution, does not own up to own mistakes, does not respect or listen to the other person's perspective, overwhelms the other person with multiple issues, such as bringing up the past to make their point proven, and also yelling, screaming, or swearing. All of these things are unhelpful when you're trying to communicate with your loved one. And understand this, people, when you're with somebody in a relationship, understand this, conflicts are bound to happen eventually. I always say that when you're with somebody and you're with them for a long time, it's almost like having a sibling that you've been raised up with. You hear sibling rivalries all the time. You can have a rivalry with your spouse as well, but it doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. And sometimes conflicts can be a good thing, especially when you find solutions and you both can compromise on that issue and resolve it. So some helpful ways to communicate anger with your partner are pausing before responding. So I always tell people, don't listen to respond, listen to understand. Oftentimes when you're in an argument with somebody, you listen to respond. You hear what they're saying, but you're not processing and understanding what they're saying before you open your mouth because you just want to get your point across because you feel my point's right, their point's invalid. I'm going to say what I got to say, whatever. Don't do that. Listen to understand first, because oftentimes the other person is telling you exactly how they feel. They're not trying to beat around the bush or just give you clues and stuff like that. They're telling you exactly how they feel. So listen to understand. Do not blame others. I always tell people who are in relationships, it takes both partners being accountable for their actions, their flaws, their mistakes, and their wrongdoings. If one person is unwilling to accept responsibility or accountability for their actions, you will not find a solution most times because that other person will always be quick to blame you or be dismissive of what you're saying or try and flip it on you to get out of it. Using I statements, all right? So when it's just you and the other person, using I statements, for example, if I tell my wife, hey, I don't appreciate how you said that to me, can you say it in a different tone or a different way? I'm using I statements to let her know that this is how I feel. This is what I'm trying to let you know. And I want that person to use I statements with me as well, and not saying, well, this person said I should do this, or this person said you should do that. What are you saying to me? I need to know how you feel.
Right.
Own up to your mistakes, saying, I'm sorry for disrespecting you earlier when I lost my temper. Look, not everybody's perfect. And sometimes when you get emotional, anger starts to rise in an argument and stuff like that. Sometimes we say things that we don't mean in that moment. We just react out of anger. If you react out of anger and you say something that you know is disrespectful, you know is going to hurt that other person, apologize. All right. Putting somebody down, belittling somebody, or just talking crazy to them just to win the argument or just to get that person to leave you alone in the argument is not going to help, especially if you plan on being in a long-term relationship. So if you've crossed that boundary, if you violated that person's respect and stuff like that, apologize. Be a grown-up, be an adult. Apologize to that person. Listen and acknowledge the other person's perspective. All right. I always tell people, as adults, we have the ability to listen to multiple perspectives and formulate our own opinions or formulate a solution. As a child, most children, up until the age of 11, they have a singular mindset, or like what I like to say is my way or the highway. It's only that concrete mindset. But as adults, our brains have fully developed for us to be able to listen to somebody else's side of the story and to pull back and to process what that person is saying, because we're not always right. And if you're always listening to yourself, you're going to find out that your mind ain't always right. It ain't always telling you the right thing. I know everybody says, listen to your gut, listen to your instincts and all that. And while that might be fine in some situations, eventually you need to be able to bounce your perspectives and listen to other people's perspectives in order to have healthy engagements in arguments and other situations. Stick to one topic. let's say, for example, your girl got a laundry list of things she's mad at you about. You leave the toilet seat up, you leave your clothes on the floor, you ain't do the dishes, you don't take the trash out, you don't listen to me, you're always talking on the phone, all these other type of things. One thing at a time, one topic, one thing at a time. All right. Don't sit there and just throw everything at that person. All right. Because oftentimes when you come at somebody and you bombard them with everything that you don't like about them or they're doing wrong, after that second thing, they've tuned you out.
Yeah, they're going to shut down on you.
They've tuned you out. Now they're no longer listening to what you have to say. Now they just feel like you're attacking them and belittling them. So you're not going to get your point across. One issue at a time, one solution at a time. And last but not least, communicate assertively but respectfully without yelling, screaming, or swearing. You can get your point across without having to yell at that person, talk down about that person, call them out their name, you stupid SOB, all this other type of stuff. Whatever your point is, say that point in a calm manner, all right? There's no need to get all worked up and get to yelling at that person because you feel like they're not listening to you. If they're not listening to you, then clearly you have other issues that you all need to resolve before you can focus on that one specific thing that you're mad about or upset about, all right? So I say all that to say issues come up in relationships, conflicts come up in relationships, but you can always have solution-focused communication with your partner to make sure that y'all are on the same page. And if the communication is effective, then the relationship should be effective as well. So those are my tips for the week, and I hope everybody has a wonderful Valentine's Day tomorrow.
Miss Carla, you want to add something just from a relationship perspective?
Oh, you've said a lot, man. With those tips, everybody should be having a good time tomorrow.
Ronnie, you nailed that thing. Look, this is what I tell people when I'm doing couples therapy. People got to learn how to fight fair. I actually have a worksheet with tips and tricks, if you will, that I share with the couples that I counsel on fighting fair. Like, there's just some stuff you can't say and do.
Your mama.
Look, you read my mind because I was going to be like, you know what? I can say whatever I want to say about Paulette, but you better not. Right. Look here now. Look, some stuff is off limits. This the line. You know what? My fiance's name is Eric. He just turned me on to this comedian. I don't even remember to do the name, but he's the one that says, "Who raised you?" So he knew
who your folks.
Like, who told you that it was okay? Stop doing that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Stop telling folks that they just like they raggedy behind daddy. That is not going on.
Exactly.
That's not the way to get what you want. It's not going to be effective for you. Cut that out. So yeah, Ronnie, I really appreciate you sharing those tips because every single solitary thing that you say, I find myself sharing the same information when I'm doing couples counseling. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes I'm like, y'all know that's Captain Obvious, right? You needed me to tell you to call him an MF. What don't work? You lucky. And then look, and y'all know Dr. Pitts does not. I do not approve of domestic violence. However, let's keep we keep 100 on HT. One of the things that I've said, I kid you not, I remember my dad saying to me when I was young and crazy, because Dr. Pitts was crazy, y'all. I was young and crazy, and Daddy used to say to me, everybody ain't got sense. You down on your hands and knees begging for somebody to beat your tail. Daddy, why would you say that to me? Oh my God. But the reality of it is, because everybody doesn't disapprove of domestic violence, some folks think that, you call them out their name, you just crossed the line. That's just like, so look, I'm,
fighting words.
From time to time. We'll get back to the sports in about 2 minutes, but I need to say this because I feel it down here.
Talk about it.
Look here. These men and women out here, because women do it too, you think that it's okay to be beaten on your mate? Let me tell you something. I know you know what I do for a living? I know a whole lot of men that will knock your head smooth off because you, as the female, laid on her hands. Keep your hands to yourself. Both of y'all put your hands in your pocket, sit on them. If y'all can't do nothing but beat on each other, you don't need to be together. And you need to be seeing somebody like me or Ronnie, because what that speaks to is a deeper issue. If you think that you have to beat on somebody that you profess to love and care about, you got a problem. You got a problem, and you need to talk about it. You need to talk about it. And you need to unpack all of that baggage, because here's the sidebar to tomorrow. You know, with COVID and everything else, domestic violence is at an all-time high. Some folk gonna get beat up and knocked around tomorrow.
Yeah.
Real talk. Some folk gonna get beat up and knocked around tomorrow. And oh, by the way, while we talk, you know, and I am not accusing anybody of anything, but I wonder if, with the Super Bowl being last week, because we know that there's a spike in domestic violence on Super Bowl Sunday. That's statistics show that.
I didn't know that.
Oh yes. That's real. Statistics show that domestic violence spikes on Super Bowl Sunday. And when you add in all of the other variables, COVID and unemployment and economic, like, it's crazy out here right now. That game last week with folk that bet on the Chiefs, what did that look like after that loss?
I can tell you one thing: if you was a male and you bet on the Chiefs, I'm pretty sure you started an argument with your girl this week to get out of Valentine's Day.
Oh, is that how y'all do? See, now we get an insight of the male psyche.
I'm not fellas. I'm not saying do that, but you know, if you've been talking a good game and you know you're not gonna come up on Valentine's Day, you should have started that argument by yesterday.
Ronnie, do not give them no
Wednesday.
idea.
No, yeah. It should have been Wednesday. You started Wednesday.
By Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Y'all wrong for that. Y'all dead wrong for that.
Well, I mean, you have to think strategically. No, you always have to have a strategic mind. I mean, everything not tactical.
Especially if you've been out here trying to sow your wild oats with multiple females, you know. You can't be juggling hearts like that. It gets ugly.
So you got to put some people on the bench, right?
Exactly. And to your point, Dr. Pitts, I just wanted to say this real quick to all my fellas out there who are listening. And Dr. Pitts made a very great point. Domestic violence is an absolute no-no on both sides. You know, I don't condone women putting their hands on men, but men, I'm gonna say this, and this might not be the most popular opinion, but the excuses of why some men choose to put their hands on females, I'm really not trying to hear it. You know, as men, you know, not every man is, you know, bigger than the woman they're with and things like that. Some women are the same size as the man they're with, but still, as men, at the end of the day, it is important that if we're having an argument or a disagreement with our loved one or girlfriend or whatever the case may be, we have to be able to keep our temper under control. Because putting your hands on them is not the answer. And a lot of times, a lot of females, unfortunately, come from homes where they witness their father or the mother's boyfriend or whatever the case may be beat the crap out of their mother. And they hear them say, "Oh, I love your mom. I'll do anything for your mom. You know, I never hurt her." Yet you over here knocking her teeth out in the living room while I'm in the bedroom crying because I think you're going to do it to me next. So as men, we have to be able to show better restraint for our emotions, no matter what a female does to get under our skin, to try and belittle us, no matter what that is. Walk away. It is better to walk away and keep your freedom and your life, because I'm letting you know right now, if one of you guys put your hands on one of these females, a dad, or uncle, or cousin, somebody's coming to see you.
Or should be.
So you're gonna have bigger problems on your hands. So please, if you feel the argument is gonna go left and get that out of hand, just walk away. At what point does trying to win the argument or prove that your point is right that you have to put your hands on somebody? It's not worth it. It is not worth it. So to all my fellows out there who are listening, keep your hands to yourself. All right. If you want to put your hands on somebody, go be a boxer or MMA fighter. There's plenty of people who you can beat up out there. If you that bad, if you that tough, Go be in one of them professions. All right. Females shouldn't be punching bags. We're supposed to love our females and hold them tight and protect them. We're protectors at the end of the day. That's our nature. Women are nurturers. We have to help. We have to be able to give them a space to allow them to nurture and take care of us. But we have to be able to provide for them and be strong for them, not use our strength against them. It's supposed to be for them. So, please, 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 please walk away from the fight. Walk away from that argument. It is not worth it.
So a final thought on that. You said something that was key when you talked about the children bearing witness to this, and how, we talk as clinicians, we talk about the systemic impact, right? And it makes me think about these scholar athletes and these professional athletes that seriously have some anger control issues, and we can't help but to wonder professionally, what's the underlying reason for that? They're not just that angry and flipping out because they lost the game. There's something deep seated, because as we know, particularly the football season just concluded, they got to fight. And we know that, part of it was the frustration in the whole 9 yards. But, we look at everything through a clinical lens. So I'm like, okay, just because you're frustrated don't mean you got to fight. Don't mean you got to fight. So there's a deeper issue there that's at play, that is running more than, we got the brakes beat off of us. And because
to your point, Dr. Pitts, even men who are experiencing depression, we know that men who experience depression, they're often more irritable and they lash out in anger, as opposed to letting somebody know how they really feel. And to your point, student athletes, I've heard so many stories about college student athletes, especially males, who are going through depression, or they have, things going on at home, and they're looked at as to be the provider amongst juggling, being a student athlete. And they have a girlfriend or somebody in their life, and what they seen at home, what they hear at home, what they were raised around, they do it on college campuses. I've heard too many stories about football players beating the mess out their girls, and it's not being reported, and they still keep their scholarship, they stay on teams and things like that. It's a very toxic situation. And if you find yourself in that toxic situation or a toxic relationship, you need to get out of it if you think there's not going to be a solution with it.
Yeah, I got a question. I mean, I know it's not, clinical, but in terms of, all the noise that's out there with social media, and people not really giving themselves an outlet to really go inside of themselves to calm themselves down. Because, when I hear mental health, I think of what will what is the cause of mental wellness, right? And that is, the listening to the God force that's within our heads. And that, to me, that's where it comes into, and having people know that just sitting down and gathering themselves in a quiet area, no TV, no social media, no phones, everything, put everything, because we're so connected that we're so disconnected.
Say that. That's real.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's powerful. Carla, what you said speaks to one of the strategies that I teach for, you'll hear Ronnie and I reference CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. One of the things that I reference with my clients is, and you would think that particularly young adults and adults would be like, oh, I know how to do that, but they don't.
No.
Understanding how to make the connection between thoughts, feelings, and actions. That disconnect that you talk about, and people being connected but not connected. I kid you all not, I see that all day, every day. Yeah. And the reason why is exactly the point that you made, Carla, is that people don't know how to go within. And let's face it, some people don't want to go within. They are comfortable.
That's the one.
Yeah. They're comfortable with the surface. They're comfortable with the superficial presence of themselves, and this appearance to themselves in the world. They look in the mirror and they tell themselves that they got it going on and that they got it all together, and they paint this facade for everybody looking in. And it's like, y'all, so to her, it's not even funny, and they are the epitome of unhealthy. And I want to clarify this too real quick before we move on. Two things. The reason why, one of the reasons why mental illness gets as as bad as it does is because, like, you don't, 99.9% of the time, you don't come out the womb mentally ill,
No,
right?
you're very
It's a
healthy.
process. You're
Yeah.
healthy. You come out the womb freaking healthy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Life happens to you in such a way that mental illness manifests itself. But it speaks to what we talked about, because we've talked quite a bit about Aaron Hernandez's situation on our show.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and you look at what happens when something goes untreated. It's not just mental illness, it's anything that
Right.
you don't attend to and treat properly will get out of control. Well, mental illness is the manifestation of people not properly tending to their mental wellness. And when you enter trauma into the equation, and what happens when traumatic experiences go unaddressed, then what happens? We have the stigma, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes on and on and on, and it becomes perpetual. And we have to be willing to humble ourselves and recognize that there's work to be done to be healthy. The second point I wanted to make before we move on was your point, Ronnie, about children. As many of you know, I have shared, goodness gracious, for the past 3 years, you know that I was a victim of domestic violence for many, many years. I also have totally disclosed the fact that I got to a point where I was the perpetrator too. Cause like, you
Mhm.
know what? You and I was going. I'm telling you, I'm. You know what? I'm gonna socket you before you get a chance. Like, you're not gonna keep catching me off guard. But I also recognize the toxicity and the. I could end up dead. He could have ended up dead. But I also recognized how that was impacting Andre, and he fought me tooth and nail. But as a child and as a prepubescent teen, I made Andre go to counseling. Oh, he was hot with me. He fought it, fought it, fought it, fought it, fought it. He didn't want to do it, didn't want to do it. He was in individual counseling. We were in family counseling. And that had to be addressed, because what he understands now at 32, about to be 33 years old in a couple of months, is the only reason that you should put your hands on a woman is to create pleasure that she has welcomed, or if you're protecting her from something. Other than that, don't let me find out. Don't let me find out, because now I'm gonna trickle on over, because I'm gonna take these stilettos off, get up on the chair, and I'm coming for that grill. You do not put your hands on a woman. You don't. When I was in grad school, he called me one day. I was actually in between classes, and he said, "Mama," he wanted to thank me, and I'm like, "For what?" He was the young lady that he was dealing with at the time, whatever it was they were going through. He wanted to thank me for forcing him to go to therapy, because what he realized in the moment that they were navigating through whatever challenge it was they were having, he was able to reflect upon what he learned in therapy, and he was able to apply that, and it proved instrumental, and he's never forgotten that, and he understands that it wasn't right, it wasn't healthy, and you can't be a part of that. You can't be with no woman that thinks she got to put her hands on you to inflict
Yeah.
danger and pain, and you can't be the perpetrator of that. Did you all have a final thought you wanted to add to that before we move on?
You said that
You
well.
said it. Yeah.
Yeah, not like I said, I think that, I think individuals have to, learn to love themselves and have respect for themselves. And I think a lot of the times, especially, in early, when people in their early 20s and things like that, people always say the 20s are, a tumultuous time, because, you're going from childhood to early adulthood. And then, mid 20s, you start to realize, like, oh, a lot of the things we place value and emphasis on really don't mean much, as opposed to just having, people who love you in your corner, establishing, yourself in career wise and starting to build a legacy. But when you bring two people together who are in the middle of that transition, you start to see a lot of those flaws from childhood, or things that you learn from childhood, because we all, anytime we're in a stressful environment, we always go back to what we know and what's comfortable. And oftentimes when two people who come from tumultuous backgrounds get together in a moment of transition, you see where these behaviors and these characteristics that they've learned from their parents and think, or whoever they were around growing up, manifest themselves in how they argue with each other and things like that. So we have to learn, especially for males and females, we have to learn how to love ourselves first. Because when we love ourselves and respect ourselves, we automatically set boundaries for what we will tolerate and not tolerate in arguments, not only with loved ones, but anybody in general. So And I think people who especially deal with attachment disorders, you see that as well with the domestic violence, because the fear of being alone is greater than, the toxicity that they're in that relationship. So they will rather endure that toxicity as opposed to just being by themselves and loving themselves and learning about themselves. So people learn to love yourselves, discover yourself. You have an entire life to do that. You don't have to have everything figured out by 25 and 30. If everybody had it figured out by 25 and 30, well, then, things would be a lot different for a lot of people. So, take time, have patience and compassion when out on yourself for whoever you're involved with sexually or in a loving relationship.
Ronnie, I think you know what you said is correct about loving yourselves, because I don't know who said it, that when you go out, the people that are around you is a manifestation of who you are, right? So if you don't love yourself, chances are you're gonna meet someone that's gonna treat you exactly how you're treating yourself.
Validate the
So
low opinion you have of yourself.
exactly, you're gonna be validated all the time. That's with your friends, that's with your family. So you start with yourself, and then you're meeting yourself every time you're out. The people that you are around, you're basically meeting yourself.
Yep.
So love
And
yourself first.
I always tell people, if you don't love yourself, you can't accept anybody else's love until you learn to love yourself and accept yourself.
Yeah.
So on that note, we're going to move on. And while we're talking about loving ourselves, we know that Ronnie is just amazing example of what it is to be a Black man and to love himself and to love Mrs. Ransom and their baby coming and all that good stuff. And
Look
on
at that
that note, I
smile.
want to say, we love you, Ronnie.
Look at that
Happy
smile.
birthday
Oh,
to
You.
you.
Happy
Happy birthday
birthday
to
to
you. Happy
happy birthday,
birthday, dear
dear
Ronnie.
Ronnie.
Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday
to
to you.
thank y'all. Thank y'all. I really appreciate it. Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. And shout out another, I also share a birthday with Rosa Parks, who would have been 108 today.
Wow.
And
Yes.
one of the greatest wide receivers to ever step on the football field, Randy Moss. Happy birthday to
Yes, Randy. Randy.
Mhm.
Indeed, indeed.
and
Look,
shout out to
folks,
all my other Aquariuses as well.
we jumping into basketball season. It's time. It's time to hoop, y'all. And we're gonna
Damn.
kick off this conversation. I just wanted to recognize this phenomenal work that Michael B. Jordan is doing. He's bringing college basketball to his New Jersey hometown. Shout out to Jersey, y'all! Shout out to Jersey. He's going to be hosting, and he's in the process of coordinating the 2021 HBCU Hoop Dreams Classic. So some of you may have heard about it, some of you may not. But now you know. We told you here on pregame. For those you didn't know. The 2021 HBCU Hoop Dreams Classic. Actor and producer Michael B. Jordan is leading a group that's planning to launch the Hoop Dreams Classic, a 2-game HBCU basketball showcase to be played December 18th, 2021 at Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. It's a homecoming for Jordan, who was raised in Newark and studied drama at the public magnet Newark Arts High School. The event will feature 4 of the top Division I HBCU basketball programs in all. There are 107 HBCUs, as you all know, we talk about them all the time, mostly in the South, with more than 228,000 students enrolled. 21 of the schools have Division I basketball. So we're going to continue to talk about that for the remainder of the year. We want to make sure that is well supported. We may even look to see if we can be there in the house for that. I do believe that is something that HSRN is thinking about. So, I'll leave that to them as far as program management and what have you, but it is definitely a very strong possibility that HT may be televising live or, on the air live from the classic. So really, really, really excited about that. And of course, I'm from Jersey, so hey, we could definitely do that. So look forward to more about that. It's going to be an awesome, awesome, awesome showcase of HBCU basketball talent. Let's get it started, Ronnie and Carla.
All right.
So, Miss Carla, with it being basketball season, so talk to us about how you prepared your teams. Oh, real quick, I think I mentioned it earlier in the show. So, Miss Carla, how long did you actually coach at Savannah State University?
Well, I coached at Savannah State for 2 years. I was actually a juggernaut of a coach, starting. Yeah,
Okay,
I moved
talk your
around a lot.
talk. Okay,
To from Hampton as a student assistant, Clark, Atlanta, Savannah, and University of Maine to Manhattanville College, and I think I left off too, Chicago State and Northern Illinois University. So, yeah, so
a wealth,
August,
a wealth of basketball knowledge. So talk
a
to us
wealth of
about
travel.
that too. So talk to us about the differences you noticed in coaching at a HBCU compared to coaching at a PWI, like it was Maine, correct? University of Maine.
Yes,
Yeah. So
yeah,
talk to us
University
about
of
the
Maine.
difference from coaching somewhere like Savannah State compared to University of Maine, and how that was, whether it was preparing the team for the season, recruiting. I know we've talked about recruiting a little bit, but just touch on those differences that you noticed, or are there really that many differences between how a HBCU compared to a PWI will prepare for a basketball season?
The preparation is similar. The preparation for me at Savannah State, or anytime I was an actual head coach, was started in August for some reason. August, the whole month of August, I didn't sleep.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like, yeah, I did my preseason conditioning. I wrote everything down. I gathered my travel, did my travel arrangements, did the calendar, did the practice schedule up until December. So, as I speak to that, I think the biggest difference in HBCU and, say, University of Maine, was the staff. The fact that I don't think I didn't have a staff. I did things on my own,
Mm-hmm.
and the number of support staff that was there, um, at University of Maine was there. Joanne McCauley, who just retired from university, being the head coach at Duke, she was my boss there. So she showed me the value of really getting out into the community and building your program. Because I
Nice.
think I said this last time, her salary really was the benchmark to everyone else's salary, including the football coach and the basketball coach.
Oh,
She
wow.
was she was the driver.
Nice.
Um, and she built a very good following of the main Black Bear, women's Black Bear Club. I think that's the name of it. They followed us. I mean, it was crazy. My first experience there, went to the camp, the basketball camp, at Maine, and the kids there, they were doing a contest. It was a trivial contest, and they were actually naming the captains from 1978, 1988.
Oh,
I'm,
wow.
I'm like, where am I?
Right? Who are you guys? Oh, my God.
Right. So I mean, is the really the support and the ownership of that program was great, and really that's what I wanted to build at the HBCU. But without the staff and without um the infrastructure is
Mhm,
very important,
mhm.
and the money. I think Duke, um, Nike was University of Maine was actually a Nike school, so
Oh,
they
wow.
yeah, so they actually supplied the program
Mhm.
with Nike equipment.
Oh wow. So one of the things I've always noticed about college football is the, of course, from Division 1 down to Division 2, there is a good difference in the talent level between Division 1 players and Division 2. But I
Right.
will say that I think in football, when we talk about talent, what I've noticed is when I was at Virginia State. Now, a lot of us, we deserve to be at Virginia State based off our talent level and things like that. But I think, in football, what I saw was oftentimes the biggest difference between a player going Division 1 and Division 2 was things such as their height and
Size.
oftentimes their grades. Size and grades were kind of like the biggest differences, and speed as well. Would you say that basketball kind of shares that same thing where now I know for, Division 1 basketball, you have your Dukes, Kentuckies, Kansas, things like that.
Right.
They always get, the cream of the crop. The top 10 players, they're going to one of those 4 schools. But I will say there is a lot of, especially in football, there's a lot of Division 2 talent who can play at the Division 1 level. And we see that in the NFL draft when you have players getting drafted from Division 2 and Division 3 schools, getting that chance because, whether it was just in high school, the circumstances didn't allow for them to go Division 1 or to a big school. But by the time they get through college, they've developed, they've matured their bodies and things like that. They're able to compete at a high level. Do you see that thing? Do you see that same kind of discrepancy when it comes to college basketball as far as the talent levels of being at a Division 2 school and looking some of that talent like, man, you could have played at Division 1. Why didn't you go Division 1? Or, you really have talent to go into the WNBA or things like that. Did you ever see those type of discrepancies?
Yeah. I mean, there's a size. There is a size discrepancy, um, especially at the post position and at the guard position. They're going to get the big guards, but
Mm-hmm.
size, speed. But that Division 2, there are some very good players at the Division 2 level. I was at the CIAA tournament a few years, about 2 years back, and there are some quality athletes that are still at the Division 2 level. Now, I also coach at the Division 3 level, and there is a bit of a talent gap there, but
Mm-hmm.
still is good basketball. Is very very. Now, I would be, I would almost say, and somebody may skewer me on this. I'll say Division 3 basketball is pretty damn good, almost
Wow.
better, a little bit better at the top level than Division 2,
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Okay.
because you actually get players that want to be there. They
Mm-hmm.
may not. They want to concentrate on their grades. It's a different focus.
Mhm.
Um, and the schools have better resources than some of the Division 2 schools that I've been there.
Wow.
Yeah, because after leaving Manhattanville, or being at Manhattanville, getting to see some of the Division 3 programs out there, I was like, if I had to do it over again, I think I might venture off in Division 3 level.
Wow. So
It's
focus
pretty good
strictly on
basketball.
Division 3?
I think so. But now, boys, men's Division 3, you're gonna see you see talented players, but there's a big size. There's a big size discrepancy there. But
So,
but talent wise, there's no. I don't think there's a difference. I think there's a size thing.
Wow.
I've heard people make this argument with the shift in the basketball culture as far as basketball becoming a positionless game, especially on the men's side, where you have 7-footers who are playing point guard, and you got people who are 6'5", 6'6", trying to block 7-footers down in the post. Now I know. Well, I really don't know. That's why I want to ask. Do you see the female game becoming as positionless as the men's game? Now, of course, not all females, they're not, height, not all females who play basketball are as tall as, what
Right.
you said the average basketball player for men is. But do you see that positionless game starting to take over in the women's game as well? Or would you say that it's still more kind of fundamental or true 1 through 5 positions?
And some players, I mean, I see women's basketball, especially at the pro level. Um, I think a favorable, aesthetically pleasing game for me, and this is my coaching brain, would be better ball handling, much better shooting. Um, Now, and much more ball movement and player movement, and less of a static game.
Got you.
So I like good guard. I mean, forward and center play. I think that is a beautiful game when they understand the power that they have in the paint, and I think you know the transition for a positionless game. Sometimes it hurts my eyes. I mean, because some of the shots that they take, it's like why,
Is
you
Why
know.
did you do that? Who told you that was a good idea? Who raised you?
Right, right. I mean, because they don't look comfortable. Right, they don't look comfortable playing it, and I know they're thinking it's more points with 3 versus 2, but I think 3 points versus 2 points, but that I think they lose the fact if you have a solid inside game, you also put the other team's valuable player in foul peril,
Mhm.
and that's also strategy. So, and then you got NBA games that they scoring 300 points. That's whatever.
So
That doesn't look good.
it's entertaining. I guess it's entertaining. The offense is always entertaining, but we always love good defense as well. Um, every now and then, but I think basketball has that entertainment value a little bit more than football. Football is definitely a slower paced game than basketball, and I think the pace of basketball has picked up exponentially especially in the
Yeah.
last decade. Um, but another thing I wanted to talk with you about, and we've talked about this during football season plenty of times, is the mental health of the student athletes during the season. One of the things that I've always talked about as far as football goes is, when we come in, when we report to fall camp in August, you start the semester and things like that. So you're automatically, involved with football, school, and all that. And then oftentimes we use the spring semester to kind of catch up on academics, get any injuries and things like that fixed, and give the players more time to get acclimated to college and things like that. But what we noticed is
Basketball, no.
when we recruit student athletes from impoverished areas and things like that, oftentimes the things that they're trying to escape from in their communities oftentimes follows them to whatever school they're going to, especially if they go to school locally. So talk to us a little bit how dealing with your players' mental health throughout the course of a season. I think in college basketball they play anywhere from 30 to 35 games in a regular season.
Oh man, college basketball lasts preseason conditioning, September till March. I mean, really. I mean, that's the whole season. I mean, that's the whole school year. So, you want to, I think the optimum thing is to add that support to the coach. And the
Mm-hmm.
coach has to, and it starts from the mental health and the mental wellness starts from the coaching perspective also. The coach has to be in line with their inner being and to understand exactly the needs of their players. And also, it goes with the building of a program. You have to have philosophy, and you really have to recruit players that fit in that philosophy. And maybe those kids that don't fit, you can't recruit because you know they're they're not wanting, if they want to get out of their situation, if they want to get out of that environment will leave them,
Mm-hmm.
but they have to want that. And it's goal setting, and it's a relationship goal setting and a pact between that player and the coach, and that player and their teammates, and that player and the school.
A
you know
follow up question. And I
okay.
just, you all stay provoking my thoughts. And it took me back to when I was teaching high school.
Mhm.
And Andre played basketball through school. And we had two players on varsity. I was thinking about the relationship between the technical foul and mental health.
Oh Lord.
And what you know, the different reasons that I've seen players get a tech called on them and the different reasons that I've seen players and coaches get ejected from the game. And we see it in football too, right? It's just called something different.
Mhm.
But I wonder, Miss Carla, you've refereed before too, right?
I referee now. Well, I'm
Okay,
opting
look,
out to
like
this
you're a
year.
ref
Yeah.
now. As a ref, what would you say? And I could be out in left field here, but I'm like, I don't know, because I remember there being players on my son's basketball team. I kid you not, I've never seen it before. We got a tech one game because our players were fighting each other. No,
Oh
I swear.
wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Two of our players, and it wasn't like it just happened one time. It happened all the time. These two particular players on our varsity team, they did not get along, and they fought each. It was crazy, and we would get texts called on
And they were
us.
still on the team.
Yeah, it was like because they were good. Because they were good, they could hoop their butts off, but they had zero self control, zero. As a ref, what does that? You said coaches have to be in touch with themselves.
Yeah, those are my two problem child. I don't want them in the game.
Wow.
Boop.
Wow. Out
Sit
of
them on
here.
the bench, coach. wait till they ready. Yeah, that's why I don't, referee. We control the game, not the players, not the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want problem children. We're gonna, you know,
Do
we're
you
gonna
see
make
that a
sure the
lot
game
though?
goes flows flows well. That's what we want. We want a good game.
As a ref or a coach, though, can you recall a time where maybe ref in the game, your thought was something wrong with them?
I'm not gonna say, but maybe.
Okay.
So
You
Miss
know what?
I mean, but you have to. The thing is, right? You have to be aware of your surroundings,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if we're there and we are responsible for the smooth flow of the game,
Mhm.
right? I'm not going to try to file to make sure that problem child. I'm going to recognize that problem child, and I'm going to tell my teammates with the strikes, hey, watch 32 white. Just watch 32 white, and I'm gonna say that loud so 32 white know that 32 white is being watched. So
Wow.
quit it. Quit it. Stop.
So
I didn't see you, but I know something in my inner being, my soul say you doing something, right?
oh man.
Because I know during football season, right? We'll particularly when folks get the jaw jacking and you can see the tempers rising. Like you'll see
Oh
refs
yeah,
say something to a player. Like you
yeah, yeah.
don't know the
Mhm.
mic's not live, so we don't know what they're saying. Do you find those situations where you've had to suggest gently to a player you might want to calm it down a little bit, or
Oh yeah, yeah. Talk it over. Well, not. I don't like to talk too much because I got the whistle.
Mhm,
There's no reason to talk. I got the whistle.
mhm,
I might get in between the players and say, hey, especially when I'm refereeing guys,
mhm,
and this might seem a little sexist. What I might say, if
mhm.
they can't stand being hit, I'm gonna say, all right, I'm gonna start refereeing like this is a 12 and under girls game. Meaning that I'm a blow the whistle all the time. Y'all come close to each other. I'm just gonna blow, just gonna blow.
Wow.
That might be a little sexist, but yeah. I say, hey, you want me to call this game like this is a men's game, or you want me to call it like it's a 12 and under girls game? Which one? Which
Wow.
one y'all want?
So
Right.
so with that so with that being, so when you have that approach to a game, and I'm pretty sure
Am I
early on in the
still
game
on?
you can kind of tell if a game's going to get chippy early on. So when you're in a game, like let's say a championship game or a conference championship game or something like that,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and we saw this a lot last week in the Super Bowl, how in the first half, you saw how the refs interjected themselves into the game early. And
Mhm.
some would argue that it was because of the refs penalties, and I would even argue that at least three of the penalties in the first half, specifically in the second
Oh yeah.
quarter, those
Oh yeah.
penalties gave Tampa Bay new life, especially when they kicked the field goal and they said the
Mental
dude was
edge.
offsides. Instead of 3 points, they added four
Yep.
more and got a touchdown.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
how do you find that balance between keeping the game fair on both sides, but also allowing them to play and let them determine how the game goes, as opposed to interjecting yourself as a ref and maybe making a call late. Let's say you call it. Let's say you're not calling charges early in the game, but at the end of the game, let's say they're maybe down by a point or so, and it's a blatant charge, but you haven't been calling it all game. Are you prone to call it right then and there, or are you kind of like, we're gonna let you play? How do you go into a game's determining that?
No, we want to be consistent all the time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the a call a play, a penalty that happens with 1 minute after the tip is
Mm-hmm.
going to be the same call 1 minute to the end of the game. There's no determination. All right, it's a close game. Just let them play out. No, if it's something blatant, if it's something that has to be called, the real courage just to call it. You got to call it and be consistent with your game, and that's our goal, is to be consistent, and we call the game by the rule book.
Mm-hmm. So
Basically, it's like you can't make a determination. All right, now it's a charge. Oh, I know it's a charge, but it's 1 minute to go. I can't make no. It's I'm sorry, don't foul.
got you. One last question before we get on to our next point, Carla. So Dr. Pitts had hinted at something, and I wanted to ask you real quick because me and Dr. Pitts had this conversation last week in reference to Aaron Hernandez, and his talent level was so great, he was given a lot of tolerance. And to Dr. Pitt's point, talking about the two players on her son's team, you as a coach, how did you navigate somebody's talent versus your tolerance of what they were doing, especially when we talk about recruiting student athletes from impoverished areas where trauma and chaos and disorganization and dysfunction is something that they've been conditioned to see and oftentimes believe that has to be in their life. So how did you navigate that with your student athletes who could have been uber talented, but maybe their transgressions and mannerisms off the court or even on the court, eventually your tolerance for them grew less, even though their talent could have been high, or vice versa. Let's
Yeah.
say they weren't as talented. So was your tolerance already short with them to begin with?
Mm, good question. See, I had to learn to handle that the right way. I think when I first started, I didn't. The most talented players would um get the most leeway, and that was not that wasn't the way to handle it. But you handle people individually. That's what I learned. You handle them. You have a standard set rules, but people are different. So you it's constant communication, constant correcting, knowing who your players are. You don't, I think it's wrong to accept more or less from players determining based on their talent level. But you care for those players as people, and if you know them, you talk to their strengths and you talk to their weaknesses. I mean, that's the best way I know to answer that question.
Yeah.
And it's an evolving skill in my when it as it pertains to me. And I learned that more from being in the army, and being the leader there. So everyone wants to do well. No one wants to step out just to make trouble. So you try to adhere, you try to find something that motivates them to 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 do well so they can achieve what they set out to achieve.
So we want to talk about let's get more into the the race and inequality amongst not only in basketball but basketball compared to other sports. You being a coach and you've coached at multiple universities, whether it was a PWI, HBCUs, and things like that. I'm pretty sure you, and being a African American woman in that field, I'm sure you've seen a lot of racial disparities between men's and women's basketball, and also basketball, how it's treated and looked at on college campuses. So talk to us about some of the things, the racial disparities you saw being an African American coach, being successful, and also going to small schools and big schools, navigating those arenas, and especially in today's times.
Ooh, racial dis. What? I think the disparity. All right, so I like to approach it this way, right? Am I still on? Because everybody seems to be frozen.
No,
Oh
you're good.
no, you're good.
Okay. I think when you, no matter where you are, I think you have to have a goal, and you have to see yourself as being successful. Am I?
You're,
Yeah,
you're
you're
still
fine.
yeah, you're good. You're good. We can hear you.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, I have unstable internet here. Is
You're fine.
anybody?
You're fine.
Am I
Yeah, we
still
can hear you.
okay?
You're clear. You're good.
Okay. You know what? I try my best not to look at a disparity in black, white, male, female issues. I know that there are, but I think if you
Ooh,
Oh,
we did lose her.
yeah, we did. Oh,
Okay. So keep you.
I,
So I know one of the things that and why it was. There she is.
uh,
She's back. There you go. You're
yeah,
we
back.
got you back.
and
You're good.
I'm back. All right. So, in the case of men's and women's basketball, um, I think when I look at the disparity between men's and women's basketball, the I think the biggest key is recognizing that men's and women's basketball is different. It's a different
Mhm.
sport, right? So because it's a different sport, you can't look at it in the same light in terms of um, why no one's paying attention to women's basketball. So
You
you,
explain what you mean
you
by
ask
that.
yourself what
The
about
men's and women's
oh,
basketball being a different sport. Like, what do you? What
it
do you?
is
Because I've never
yeah,
heard that.
men's basketball. I think it is because men's basketball is played above the rim, and
Mhm.
women's basketball is not. Is it
Okay.
and it the entertainment value there sometimes can be lost when women don't shoot well, and
Mhm.
and the ball handling isn't as clean. So
Okay.
if you clean up that, if you clean it, it should be at least 8 pistol P's on the court. If you know who pistol P, that's the way I think women's basketball should be played. Not
Okay.
focused on making it like men's
Okay.
basketball. It can't. It's not going to be that. All
Mhm.
right. So if you focus on making women's basketball look like the Harlem Globetrotters, wasn't a lot of dunking. The Harlem Globetrotters, if you remember, they curl and kneel.
Yeah.
It was a lot of passing, a lot of great ball handling. So
Mhm.
if you make it like that,
Mhm.
and the second thing that I noticed, especially when I was with Maine, women the people who are drawn to women's basketball tend to be older, more money, and they're more dedicated,
Wow.
and they're more dedicated to the players.
Mhm.
So if you kind of focus on that, it can be a much more richer marketed game, because the men's basketball is plays so much younger audience without a lot of money,
Mhm.
you know. So I always University of Maine, the way Joanne ran her program, it inspired me. It's like it can happen because University of Maine is not a lot of great. They don't have great facilities. The facilities are clean,
Hmm.
well kept, but
Mhm.
there's nothing great about their facility.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about, especially between the men's and women's game, especially now with the NCAA discussing about the name, image, and likeness,
Oh, that's awesome.
and I think, I think players should be able to get compensated for
Hmm.
their efforts, especially I always say, as student athletes, we're making an investment in the school because,
Hmm.
we're getting an education and we're getting the chance to display our talents on
Right.
whether it's the football field, basketball court, and stuff like that. I feel like if you're making a revenue or a profit off of our talent and our efforts, we should be compensated as well. However, we do know that amongst most college campuses across the country, oftentimes, the difference between men's and women's basketball is that, yeah, men's basketball will generate a high revenue. We
Hmm.
see where just the NCAA men's basketball tournament
Oh
every
yeah.
March up until last year, they were averaging, I want to say, almost 200 or 300 million just in profit after the tournament's over. Whereas, and don't get me wrong, and you hinted at this as well, Miss Carla. I think the women's game is very. There's a lot of talented women who play basketball, and I think they're fun. And I would even say that their fundamentals, just the basic fundamentals of basketball, are sharper than the men's.
Yeah.
Of course, when it comes to handling and things like that, the more athletic the person is, their handles might be a lot better. But just the fundamentals of basketball, I think women do that exceptionally well compared to men, where more men's basketball is kind of relied on their talent, just their natural talent, as opposed to fundamentals. We see that with American basketball players compared to European
European. Right.
basketball players. When they come from overseas, they're more fundamentally sound, and they often have longer careers because they rely on fundamentals as opposed to talent. But I think oftentimes people get upset, especially, quote unquote feminists get upset when we sit there and say, well, we want the women's game to be equal like the men. And at the end of the day, I've always argued that even though they can be just as talented and just as fundamentally sound as the men's game, unfortunately, to your point, the entertainment value of the women's game compared to the men's game kind of hinders that. And schools look at it like, well, in all reality, we're allowing you to play the sport on our campus because you're not generating us any money.
Right.
I've seen times where when I was in high school, typically when I would go on a recruiting visit to schools, they would take it, since it was in the wintertime, they would either take us to a men's game or a women's game. In most colleges, they play the men's and women's the same day. And, of course, the men's game, if it was a good school, a lot of people are there. And by the time the by the time the women's game starts, the stands are either empty or they'll have the women play first. So those fans who are coming in for the men's game at least catch the tail end of the women's game.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people have a hard time understanding that, while it sounds good in theory and on paper to, be equal, get equal pay, get equal compensation, at the end of the day, well, that money has to come from somewhere. That support has to come from somewhere. And we see that just the support for the women's game compared to the men's game is lacking severely. We start to see, like, somebody like Kobe Bryant, who had invested a lot of time and effort into building up not only the WNBA, but also the women's AAU circuit across the country, where he had his Mamba Sports Academy and things like that. So I think, to your point, both games are absolutely different, but I still think that, being a being a female student athlete, you're still held to the same standards as the men student athletes. You still have to maintain a certain GPA, you
Yeah.
still have to maintain your practice schedule, your study hall schedule, and all of that. But the compensation is clearly not there.
Yeah, yeah, but it can be. All right. So the last women's coaches clinic that I went to, there was a round table that I thought was just um just why they were discussing um open sexual, gay, embracing lesbian players and yada yada yada. And okay, eh, people don't play basketball because they're gay or lesbian, whatever, right? So
Absolutely.
that it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
But why not discuss what's gonna get the butts in the seats? And that's what's important instead of the ancillary the off topic of sexual preference.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People gonna do what they're gonna do. It doesn't matter,
Right.
right? But what's gonna invite people to your games? What's gonna be entertaining? How do you get people to come to your um, uh, home games? Now, the NBA wasn't the NBA until Michael Jordan. They didn't start making money into the late 80s.
They were tape delayed.
So, that was 75 years after they, started the NBA um, consistently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to take the same patient and growing your sport with the WNBA. It's going to take the same patience. And you're not going to bring people into your sport being angry. I mean, it's not. You're not. Can't be mad and unwelcoming to people, namely men coming to the arena
Mm-hmm.
and think that you're going to grow your sport.
Isn't that part of the issue though? And doesn't that speak to the very essence of what we're talking about, in that we know that as women, whether you're a woman of color or whomever, women are considered marginalized and disenfranchised, right? And so there's this perspective that we're of lesser value somehow. So when I look at how that carries over into sport, what you're saying makes perfect sense to me as a woman, and I'm guessing makes perfect sense to Ronnie too. But when you look at this social culture that sees women as less than, it to your point, Carla, it sounds like there needs to be this overhaul of and a cultural shift that sees women as valuable and equal, period. Excuse me, period.
Yeah.
And if that's not going to happen, and so here's where I teeter totter on the fence. I don't, I've never considered myself a feminist. I love being a woman, even with all of the heartache, headache, pain, and frustration that comes with being, doubly marginalized and disenfranchised as a woman of color. But my struggle with it, though I definitely believe there are absolute categories where societally we can do a better job of leveling the playing field, I still believe there still needs to be some differentiation, because it's what creates balance in the freaking universe.
Right,
If we
right.
were in a universe of all women or in a universe of all men, we wouldn't exist.
Right,
So we need that differentiation in order to be able to thrive as mankind. So I think that there has to be a willingness. I've often told people I believe in equality, I believe in justice and all of that. I didn't fight for women's lib.
Well, think about this, right? Ronnie said it earlier about loving yourself, right? So and accepting who you are. And that's part of it. It doesn't matter what everybody else thinks of you, right? So embrace that audience that love you, and then embrace it, love yourself, love your sport. Don't try to
Yeah.
make it into anything else. You can improve it, but don't try to make it into people dunking on each other or whatever. It's not that.
Stay
That's
in
not
your
the
lane.
sport, you know.
You can stay in your lane and keep that.
Is exactly,
It's almost
exactly.
kind of like
And then
baseball, how
you
baseball and
will.
softball is. Like
Yes,
softball,
yes.
softball doesn't try to be baseball. Softball is what it is.
Right.
They don't overhand pitch. I mean, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I think it's harder to hit a softball pitcher than
It
it is
is.
a baseball pitcher.
Yeah.
Especially a fast pitch softball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But softball stays in their lane, quote unquote. It's the same exact game, almost the same exact rules, but they're not trying to hit home runs on the MLB field for the professional softball players. Their fields are shorter. They're geared towards their athletic abilities, and nobody, to my knowledge, nobody necessarily takes offense to it. Now, I will say the only thing they take offense to is the funding of, the difference between baseball and softball. But once again, we run into that same thing where, baseball has more funding because there's more people and the entertainment value is greater. But I would say, shoot, especially in college, I feel like college softball is way more exciting than professional baseball, if you ask me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I've fallen asleep at professional baseball games. So, I
It's like watching grass grow.
Look,
That's what I tell
look, I've been
But I like going to the park, but I don't watch it on television. I like going to the
you
park.
were
But yeah,
like,
women's basketball is a great sport. I love it. I love it. I love it to death. You know, it hurt me to stop coaching, but that's why I referee. But it's like you can't you have to increase the value of it. And I would say, you know, AAU is hurtful for men's basketball, and that is not teaching fundamentals,
yeah,
and
I
it's
agree.
hurtful for women's basketball because it is taking the creativity out of it, because the way we used to play basketball and learn basketball is just to play on the playground. And you learn that you can't, you know, the difference between playing against guys and playing against women is you have to learn, playing against guys, you have to learn to look away, you know. You have to learn to fake them, so you get that skill, and you get other, you know, you learn to, you know, start a layup here, make them swipe, and then go around there. You know, you get creative. But AAU, you have so much coaching. No one plays on the basketball court anymore. No one plays.
It's
They
whoever
just play during practice.
whoever
That's
has
it.
whoever has the most talent 9 times out of 10 will win that tournament.
Right.
And I had one more. Sorry to cut you off, Dr. Pitts. I just had one more quick question, Miss Carla, and I hope we have enough time because we got about 4.5 minutes before we wrap up.
I'll make it short.
All right. So when we talk in this whole season since we've been doing this podcast, we talk about how, you know, when on the football side of it, when college coaches go to recruit football players, especially going into the inner cities and in the impoverished areas, one of the easiest ways to sell somebody going to play college football is that, you know, if you go here, you have a chance to make it to the professional level and change your family's fortune. And a lot of times, even though coaches don't necessarily use that in their pitch, they know that if you come play football at college, whether it's Division I, Division II, Division III, if you are good enough and you work hard enough, there is a chance you can be a professional and make tons of money. How different is that? Even with men's basketball at the Division I and somewhat Division II level have that same recruiting pitch, even though it goes unspoken that if you come here, you have a chance to go to the NBA. And even though they have a WNBA, we know that, you know, the WNBA has been fighting to have their pay increased. But as a college basketball coach for women, did it affect your recruiting pitch at all? Knowing that, you know, this is an assumption. You please correct me if I'm wrong. I would envision that going to recruit women to play college basketball, you can't rely on that, you know, hey, well, you can go professional if you're good enough. So how does that recruiting pitch change to get women, especially women of color, to college to play a sport?
Environment. You recruit the environment. Recruit according to the school's reputation for academic excellence. You got to recruit the parents. You recruit according to family atmosphere. And you know, that's the biggest thing for women, because they like to play. Really, they're there because they want to be there, and there's not a real thought of playing professional.
One quick follow-up.
I mean, that was my pitch, just building the program.
So based off your pitch, do you think that oftentimes women of color who are in disenfranchised neighborhoods and in communities, do you think oftentimes coaches might be less apt to go recruit them? Because, you know, for example, you know, when football coaches go to recruit young men, especially men of color in impoverished areas and things like that, they can sit there and tell them, like, look, you can change your family's fortune. You can get here, get an education, get a job and all that. Do you think there's that big of a difference when recruiting females who come from low areas where it's like, you know, look, well, we can't.
You get a great education.
Yeah,
you opportunity for you to change your environment, change your, you know, the trajectory of your life, because, you know, we offer this academic program, and you know, we're going to be there to support you.
Got you.
And you have to have a staff to be there to support someone.
That
You
is
got to have someone there. A head coach has many wears many hats.
absolutely, absolutely.
I'm going to wrap us up with this final thought, two final thoughts, actually. As you all kept referencing fundamentals in basketball, it reminded me of the movie Glory Road, and we've touched on it before on previous shows, where the girls' basketball coach, the girls' high school basketball coach, went to the men's college basketball program and taught them the fundamentals of basketball, and they went on to win the national championship against rivals. They beat I think it was Pat Riley's team, the Kansas City Jayhawks, right, or the Kansas Jayhawks in that national championship game as depicted in Glory Road. So
Pat Riley was on that team.
Okay.
yeah, right. Fundamentals clearly
Yeah.
is paramount when it comes to playing basketball. This show was really important for me. I know, everybody's like, oh my God, Dr. Pitts, you've been flooding social media. Yeah, because I want people to be aware that we're hitting these topics. Our goal every week is to educate, empower, and liberate. And I have a heart for scholar athletes. I have a heart for professional athletes. I have a heart for families. And so many of our Black and brown children look at look at their athletic ability, excuse me, as their way out of poverty. But I also want to highlight as we close that their athletic ability can also be their ticket to knowledge, meaning a college education. So I want to encourage our listening and viewing audience that athletics isn't always about going to the league. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And as a people, we have got to be more committed to the education, whether it's a formal college education or not. Education is key to us being able to change the systemic challenges that we face as a people. It is necessary to bring us out of poverty. It is necessary to bring us out of crime laden communities. It is necessary to because it empowers us to be able to sit at the table with members of the dominant culture to address the issues such as funding the programs for women's basketball or softball or whatever the case may be. It empowers us to be able to address systemic racism on campus in our communities. The knowledge is necessary in order to move us forward in healthy, positive, and productive ways, and to really be instrumental in combating these things. I've said time and time before on shows, I'm not marching. I ain't marching for a darn thing, but I'll sit at the table and have a conversation. And in order to be able to sit at the table and have appropriate conversation, you have to be able to hold your own in the boardroom and on the block, on the field, on the court, on the baseball or softball diamond. And outside of those environments, you have to be able to communicate effectively to bring about change. And in order to communicate effectively, you have to have the knowledge to do so. And we're going to close on that note. We hope that you will tune in to join us next week, folks. Miss Carla, we thank you so much that you're with
Thank
us.
you again, Miss Carla.
Jared and Andre, we miss you, but we got you covered.
Having fun, man.
She's holding it down. She's holding it down. She's holding it down. Thank you so much. That concludes House Talk Pregame for this week. We'll see you all back next week on Facebook Live and Heritage Sports Radio Networks. Folks, have a phenomenal Valentine's Day, a wonderful weekend. Enjoy yourself. Stay safe. Stay warm. Mask up. Put the mask on. Stop playing around. Put the mask on so that we can get out this pandemic and get out and start doing stuff. Warm
Yes,
weather.
Lord.
Warm weather coming. I don't want to be in that mess this summer. Till next week.
Have a good weekend, folks.
Hey, bye bye.